The topic today that I was given has to do with Islam and contemporary world, and special reference to three concepts and notions. The first one is terrorism, radicalism or radicalization, and Islamophobia. So let me start with 3 points as an introduction. And as you know, maybe some of you are following on Facebook or on Twitter, on YouTube, some of my work. Some, and I know much less, are reading books. So if you read books or if you follow, you know that I'm not here to entertain you for 1 hour. I'm here and you will see that I'm going to challenge you as students, as human beings, as Indian citizens, about what is also our responsibility. Because it's easy to sit down and to blame the world. It's much more important to stand up and to change the world. So I think that you have to avoid the mobile phone and ringing and clapping as well. All my talk, no clap. So what we start with, the first point is, as we all know, when it comes to Islam today, mainly wherever you go, in the West, or in India, or in African countries, or wherever you go, even in Muslim majority countries, by the way, Islam has a negative image. The negative image is, the reason for that is it's connected to many, many realities that we keep on having and always associated with what? Mainly violence. When you speak about Islam, you speak about violence, you speak about terrorism, you speak about radicalization, again, the word that you use. And you have two other concepts that are important. The great majority of the Muslim majority countries have to do with dictatorship. It's no freedom, no democracy, the great majority of the Muslim majority countries. And also something that is important that we need also to get when it comes to the West is that very often Islam and Muslims are associated with migration. The great majority of the migrants coming to Europe or coming to the States today are Muslims. In Canada it's the case, in North American countries. In the States now it's the reality of many Muslims arriving, even though it's not the most important community because you have people coming from Mexico, coming from Southern America, but in Europe, throughout the countries, the main reality when it comes to migration has to do with Islam. So it has to do with terrorism, it has to do with violence, it has to do with radicalization, it has to do with the Middle East and the so-called peace process, which is not a peace process, and there is no process at all, by the way, and what is also the reality of migration and dictatorship. So it's a negative perception, and we have to deal with this. If you want to change the world, if you want to change the perception, you have to take into account the psychological factor when it comes to this. And the psychological factor is to know what you are dealing with. If you speak about Islam in the contemporary world, you cannot deny the fact that the perception is negative. Even among Muslims, when you speak about with Muslims about the reality of the Islamic communities around the world, they don't have a positive perception. Very often a negative perception of themselves. Even if I come here talking to Indians, the way you look at your community is, oh, we are divided, we are not doing the job, we are not providing anything, it's very difficult, they don't like us, and so forth, and so on and so forth. So this is one thing. The second point that I wanted to address here is to ask, what are the reasons, what are the causes, why this is happening, mainly for two important reasons. The first is the political discourse, coming from politicians now, and the media coverage. We cannot deny the fact that the media coverage are playing a very important role in the negativity related to Islam today. But the political discourse is also important. Why? Because throughout the world, even in India, by the way, there is something that you have to understand. Yesterday we were talking much more about ideologies, so we are talking about neoliberal or capitalism versus Marxists. It's very rare that today you still have Marxists playing an important role, even though I think that we should reconsider the way we are dealing with Marxist ideas in the way they were criticizing the society and the economic order. So you might think that it's outdated as an ideology, but many things that were said before as to the critique of the capitalist system are still very relevant, even though now all the people are only speaking about the free market, the neoliberal system, even, by the way, the great majority of the Islamists around the world. Political Islam is not providing today a critique of the capitalist system. They are just trying to Islamize some of the means with which we are dealing in the capitalist system. Having said that, the most important feature when ideologies are dying down and that it's no longer the reality that we are facing, what we see is the normalization of the populist discourse. And the populist discourse is no longer rational, reasonable ideology built on principles and vision. It's mainly four features that you see. And you have them here in India, with the running party in India as much as you have them in the West. Normalization of the populist discourse. So what was yesterday said by far-right parties is now normalized within the political parties across the political spectrum. What are the four features of populism? The first one is the binary vision of the world. Is us versus them. So they create the other. Us, Indian people, we have a problem with them, Muslims, because these Muslims are not really part of our society. So they create the other within the society. It's exactly what we are experiencing in the West. We have the European passports, but we are not Europeans in their mind. So they asked the Muslims, you have to integrate, but their mind did not integrate us. So the problem is in their mind, not in our reality. And it's the same with some of the politicians within this country. The fact that you are Indian Muslim, the fact that you are Muslim and Indian is questioning your true belonging to what is truly Indian and the perception they have of India. So us versus them, the binary vision, polarization within the society. You have this in the political discourse. When you have no longer an ideology to solve the problems and the social problems and to speak about justice, you speak about identity. So you are shifting the discussion from talking about social problems and politics to let us talk about identity. Who are you? I don't care who I am. What are your solutions to change the society today? That's my question. So the first one is this. The second feature of this populist discourse is always very emotional. It's what I call emotional politics. You don't deal with ideas, we deal with emotions. And emotion means the more you spread fear about the people around you, the better you are going to gather them around you. So I'm not going to attract you through my solutions, I'm going to attract you through your fear. So be careful, these people are dangerous. Be careful, Muslims are dangerous. Be careful, you are potentially a terrorist. So you are potentially a threat to our society. This is everywhere. So this is the populist discourse, is emotional politics based on fear. You spread fear because you don't have ideas. You don't have a political vision, a political ideology. This is the second. The third one is very simplistic answers to very complex questions. So for example, if we have unemployment, if we have inflation, if we have an economic crisis, it's simple, it's them. It's because of them. They are creating the problem. What was said by the far-right party yesterday, oh, you know what, we have unemployment because the foreigners are taking our jobs. This is exactly what it said now. My problem is you. It's not that I don't have a problem to solve social justice, equality, against racism. I'm transforming very complex questions into simplistic answers. You are the problem. The other is the problem. So you create the other, and it becomes at the end the source of everything. Simplistic answers to complex political, economic, cultural questions. And the last one, which is also very important in this that we are sharing with many is populism is always nurturing a sense of victimhood. Victimhood. From emotional reaction, say, we are the victims of them. So, and the first who was nurturing this, you remember just after 2001, George W. Bush? When you know what is the American policy around the world saying, we are the victims of these people. They don't like democracy, they don't like our values, so we are the victims. So the populist discourse is always making us the victim of them. Emotional politics, binary vision, simplistic answers to complex questions, and victimhood. And this is everywhere. When you deal with this, you have to ask, are you going to fall into the trap? Because Muslims, many Muslims around the world are exactly reacting emotionally and nurturing a sense of victimhood. They don't like Islam. They don't like us. And they, who is this they that you are talking about? Us versus them. We do exactly the same. So now we have to liberate ourselves from this mindset, which is a big problem in the way we have to deal with politics today. What could be our response? And when I'm saying our response, I'm talking not only to Indian Muslims or Muslims. I'm talking to human beings. I'm talking to citizens. I'm talking to people of dignity and principles. Not only you as Muslims, or us versus them again. Even though everything that I'm going to say today is not against the Islamic principles, but I do not reduce my belonging to my principles, to my belonging to a very narrow community. I will never make my brotherhood in faith against my brotherhood in humanity. You get the point? That's essential. الأخوة الإنسانية, the human brotherhood, it's not against my religious or my spiritual brotherhood or sisterhood. One is not against the other. One is giving strength to the other, not oppose the other. So the point here, for me, it's essential. Our response should be with four features. First one, it should be a clear answer. A clear answer means intellectually clear, not emotionally clear. By the way, it's very difficult to have a clear emotional idea. The only fact that it's an emotional idea, it's not clear. Are you thinking with your body or are you thinking with your mind? You should think with both, but the preference here is to have a clear response. The second is a principle answer. And this is our contribution to the debate. It's not to accept this binary vision, a principle. We rely on principle. If I'm saying, for example, I am not going to be on the side of the Muslims, whatever they do. If you are my brother in Islam, I'm going to support you if you are right. I'm going to stand against you if you are wrong. My brotherhood is based on principle. I support you when you are right. I face you if you are wrong. If I'm saying this, I'm saying at the same time, wherever I am, even in this country, I will be on the side of the oppressed. So if in this country as an Indian Muslim, I will always be on the side of the Pariah, or the Dalit, or the people who are in the caste system discriminated. I'm saying even to the Muslims who are supporting this system, you will find me. I'm not going to support you. If you, as a Muslim, are able to support a system that is treating people in an inhuman way, while the Quran is telling us, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, every single human being has the same dignity, man and woman, before God. If you, as an Indian Muslim, you are supporting the system of caste, you will find me against you. And I'm even going to support no black. It's a special factor that I know that you are very emotional, so I keep on repeating. Yes, Indian people are emotional, like the Arab. I'm always saying, for those of you who are following on YouTube, I repeat something: listen to lecture the way you read books. If you read a book and you like the idea, you don't clap. You just write it down, think about it, do the same. It would be completely contradictory to come to a lecture telling you don't be emotional and you keep on clapping every time you like it. It's not a political meeting here. So the point for me is to be clear on this principle. It also has to be balanced. And this is the notion of wisdom. As the Prophet ﷺ said, gave everything its right and the right position to be balanced. Establish the balance with equity. Be principled, be just, be balanced. And the last, which is also something that I think that you have to ask yourself. It's very easy to support my ideas when you are in this room. The question is when you go out and you have to face sometimes something which is no longer in the contemporary political discourse something that we like, is the price to have to pay to defend your ideas. How do we call this? We call it courage, to be courageous. And why the Prophet ﷺ for the Muslims was the example? Because he was the most courageous of everybody. He was the first to go. He was not telling, go and I will wait for you to come back. This was not the way. He was the first to go. So we need to have students, thinkers, women, men, courageous, balanced, principled, and clear. That's the four features that we are expecting in the world today when it comes to the discussion. Having said that now, let me... It's not mine. Somebody is holding you. Now, let me come to the three notions that we had and go quite quickly in discussing them. What do we have to do first is to avoid two things that are problematic in the world today. As I said, in the world today, the image of Islam is quite negative. What do we have to avoid? The first thing that we have to avoid when it comes, for example, to terrorism or violence, or Muslims killing people or innocent people in Muslim majority countries or in the West or here in India. What we have to avoid is what I call the state of denial. And the state of denial is some Muslims coming every time something is happening by saying, you know what, they are not Muslims, it has nothing to do with Islam. I'm sorry. Who are you to tell about them that they are not Muslim? If somebody is saying, I am a Muslim, La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, if somebody is saying this, you have no right to put him or her outside Islam. You can't do that. If they think that you are not Muslims, like for example, I am in the list of in this list of people who are known, who are more dangerous for Islam than the non-Muslims themselves. This is what they are saying. If they put me outside Islam, I will never put them outside Islam. This takfiri position is wrong. So the stage of denial will be, these are not Muslims, they are not Muslims, and it has nothing to do with Islam. I'm sorry, they are Muslims. And it has to do with Islam. Why? Because I met, as somebody, or someone, or some of you have met before, some Muslims who have a reading of the scriptural sources of the Quran, which is, in fact, very dangerous, very narrow-minded, very, very problematic. I met some of them. I met some of them telling me, you are not a Muslim. I'm going, if you are very dangerous. So I even met somebody, I met him, I left the country, it was in Mauritius, and just after I left he said, Tariq, Ramadan, kafir, murtad. Kafir, murtad, meaning I can kill him. No, it's not true, you are smiling. Thank you. Kafir, murtad. That's a big thing. So the point here is that we have to acknowledge the fact that some Muslims are behaving in a way which is not acceptable, and we have to stand against them by doing two things. First, not to say that they are not Muslims, and second, to challenge them with Islamic argument about their Islamic reading. We have to do this.
This is the state of denial, but just denying that it has. Does it mean that, having said that, does it mean that we don't know that some could be instrumentalized, that there are intelligence services playing with some Muslims? Of course we know that. We are not naive. But having said that, cannot be a justification not to acknowledge the fact that some within Islam are doing things that are against our principles, and we have to challenge them. As Muslims, this is our duty. So this is one thing. The other thing that we have to avoid is this position coming to every time you are criticized as Muslims, you keep on apologizing. I'm sorry, not on my name, it's not us. And condemning again. So that's, and condemning only the results. So we have some Muslim leaders, every time there is something happening around the world, they come and say, we condemn. Okay, thank you. What else? What else are you adding to the discussion? When you speak about the consequences, don't you have the duty to speak about the reasons why this is happening without justifying? Nothing can justify the killing of innocent people. Nothing. I'm not going to justify. But tell me, am I not going to say, I'm not justifying, but I want to understand? So to understand is not to justify. To understand is that why this is happening. Why some people end up being violent? They were not born violent. Are they social realities? Are they dictatorships? Are they situations where they are pushed or that we can end up doing this? Of course they are. So I think that we have to avoid just condemning the consequences and not challenging or questioning the reasons why. By saying something, which is to